Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us. Super Bowl in the books. Kansas City Chiefs won their second straight Super Bowl, the third with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback. Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, was in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. She joins us. Kay, two questions about that. What stood out about the Chiefs, and how far are the Browns from being there with where the Chiefs and the 49ers were?
Well, I wrote a column yesterday. It's up on cleveland.com right now, talking about how the bar for Deshaun Watson is set right there at Patrick Mahomes. And that's the assignment. Everybody knows that that's what the Cleveland Browns have to do. They have to figure out a way to get past Patrick Mahomes. It's the assignment for pretty much everyone in the NFL right now, because we could be witnessing the GOAT when all is said and done. And so that's what the Browns have to do. They have to keep the pedal to the metal. They have to keep trying to bolster their defense, their offense, so that they can keep pace with a player and a team like that.
Did it seem to you in watching it, Patrick Mahomes didn't play real well, and then when the game was on the line, he was nearly flawless. It was almost like, okay, I figured this out.
Well, we've seen that with Tom Brady, too. We've seen that exact same thing with Tom Brady, where you think it's over and where you think, oh, Superman isn't Superman right now. And then they turn back into the superhero that they really are. So we've seen it. And, you know, I do think that at the age of 28, Patrick has a good chance of catching Tom Brady, maybe even surpassing him. He's been to the Super Bowl 4 times in his 6 seasons, won 3 of them, 3 Super Bowl MVPs. He's 28 years old, and it's just going to be a tall order for the Cleveland Browns. It's going to be, you know, what they have to do. They've got to figure it out. You know, it's going to be, again, it's going to be something that Jim Schwartz is going to have to burn the midnight oil, figuring out how to deal not with just Deshaun Watson, but with Andy Reid and those things that he comes up with on the goal line. So it's never going to be easy. It's really, really going to be hard to pull this off over the years, but it's just exactly what the Browns are going to have to do.
So Peter King from Football Morning in America posted this. So we know that the Eagles are playing Friday internationally to open the first week of the season, Friday internationally in Brazil. Browns are one of the road teams on the Eagles schedule. Peter King is connecting the dots. Cleveland won 11 games. 5 different quarterbacks have scarred, but likely a good quarterback back healthy. He's talking about Deshaun Watson. Reigning Defensive Player of the Year in Myles Garrett. I'm sure the NFL hasn't made a definitive call yet, but the Browns make the most sense to me. That's Peter King from Football Morning in America. Deshaun Watson on QB Unplugged talked about his thoughts about potentially playing in Brazil.
Y'all may have the opportunity to go play in Brazil. What is it, Sao Paulo? Or what is it? How you say that joint?
I just know it's something like that. Rio, that's all I know about Brazil, for real, and Neymar.
I know it's far, but we're kicking off the season Friday night. Eagles got the home game, so y'all definitely on the list of opponents because y'all play them next year. I'm definitely trying to be in the building. When you already play the international game, like what's the vibe with international games in general?
I think it just depends on the team, for real. Like, so I went when I was in Houston. We went on Thursday, and I know Jacksonville, when we played against Jacksonville, it was in London. They went earlier that week. So, you know, most teams like to stay the whole week. Some teams like to stay 4 or 2 days, you know. So then it depends on where the teams pitch you. Like, we were out in the boonies. Like, we were about 45 minutes, an hour away from London, you know what I'm saying? So, like, but, you know, me, I like to be, you know what I'm saying? I like to see the city
I'm going to go see the city a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, me and D-Hop, we went to the city, a couple of other guys, and just kind of vibe a little bit and check it out, you know? It's always a good opportunity. That's the whole point of playing international. You know, doing that, seeing what the culture is like. And, we ended up winning that game in London. So, I enjoy my time going out because I like to travel anyway. So I ain't never been to Brazil. So if we get the opportunity, you know, I'm going to be all in on that.
Kay, I know you've kind of written on it. It's a possibility. When you connect the dots the way Peter King did it, it makes sense. It would be interesting. That's a rough way to open the season, though.
It really would be a rough way to open the season, but the Browns travel well. And I do think that they probably have a better chance than 1 in 9. Speaking of the 9 home teams of the Eagles, they probably have a better chance than 1 in 9 because I think some of those other teams will be playing other international games. And so the Browns are probably one of maybe 7 or 6 teams realistically that will have a chance to go do this. You might think that there would be some indication by now that the Browns will be that opponent because this is such a big deal. It's a historic time, and you're going to have to really plan ahead for that. But, we'll know soon enough. But, again, the Browns travel very well. And why do I know this? Because we were all over the road with the Cleveland Browns last year, all the reporters that covered the team. So, we had 10 days at the Greenbrier, a week in Philadelphia, a week in Los Angeles. And, they did really well with staying on track, doing all the team bonding. And, I think a lot of those trips helped them ultimately stick together and make the playoffs in a very injury-ravaged year.
I know you've addressed this both in an article and the Hey Mary case. Your thoughts, John, on the extensions for Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry?
Yeah, I think they're coming probably sometime soon. There might not be a huge sense of urgency to get it done today or tomorrow or the next day necessarily, but they are coming. They're coming this offseason. We know that. I mean, when you get the team to the playoffs twice in your first 4 seasons and your NFL Coach of the Year twice in those first 4 years, you are going to get an extension. And Andrew Berry, assembled the #1 defense, helped bring in Jim Schwartz. There's no way that he is not going to get an extension himself. So it's really just a matter of time. It's the right thing to do. Continuity in this organization, it's great. It's finally good that they have this stability, and they will reward those guys with extensions before too long.
All right, so let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Kevin Stefanski should not have gotten Coach of the Year. You need to stop with the had too many injuries or whatever. All he is a glorified play caller, and he isn't good at that. We need to get a new head coach that'll take care of the whole operation. They're hoping that Deshaun Watson will be the quarterback he used to be, when in reality, he only had 1 year, gentlemen. 1 year. And do you think somebody like Kevin Stefanski, that arrogant individual, is going to be able to raise Deshaun Watson's game? I just don't think so. And it's a sad state of affairs because you got Andrew Berry, who isn't any better. We're going to have a whole new stadium, a whole new outlook on life, and you're still going to have that guy in there. I can carry on. Take care, guys.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, I don't see where you're calling Kevin Stefanski arrogant, even a little. Head coaches that are offensive coaches are all glorified play callers. I just don't understand the thought process in that one. And I'm trying to. I'll listen to everybody's opinion. I don't get that one.
Well, I just don't think a whole ton of people feel that way. I think they're, riding high right now after, of course, the playoff loss to the Houston Texans was a horrible way to end the season after finally getting there in the way that they did with, for all intents and purposes, being down to their 4th quarterback. I know they used a 5th, but for the most part, using their 4th quarterback to get them into the playoffs, that was pretty remarkable. And I think Kevin did a really good job of holding everybody together, of keeping the blinders on for those guys, keeping everyone focused on one game at a time. I think Andrew Berry did a really good job of a number of things, including bringing in 2 guys that I think made the difference in the season and then that the Browns would not have made the playoffs without. And that is kicker Dustin Hopkins and quarterback Joe Flacco. Without those 2 guys, 2 awesome pickups by Andrew Berry last season, they would not have been there. And so I think you have to give them a lot of credit for that. And again, these guys will get their extensions. They'll get them probably sooner than later. And I think they're both well-deserved.
Again, I know you've written an article about this. Do you think Kevin Stefanski should turn over play calling to Ken Dorsey?
I don't. I've been very vocal about this. As you mentioned, I wrote a column about it. Here's why I think that. We just got done watching a Super Bowl where you've got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes working together, and those two are dynamite together. And I would like, for one, to see if Kevin Stefanski has that same magic or can have that same magic with Deshaun Watson. We haven't seen it yet. They've only had 6 games together in 2022. They only had 6 games together last year, and most of those were with Deshaun Watson being injured. So we really haven't seen what these two guys can accomplish together, and I think that's important to find that out. You can always turn the play calling over to Ken Dorsey later down the road, even halfway through the season, if it's not going the way that you want it to, or the year after that. But I think it's time to really see what Kevin Stefanski has in terms of play calling chops. Let's see what he's got. And let's see what he's got with Deshaun Watson. He's worked very hard to try to tailor an offense to Deshaun's skill set. He's really the biggest constant from last year. They did retain Chad O'Shea, the receivers coach, as well, but for the most part, they blew up the rest of the offensive staff. And, they need some continuity. I don't think that with everything being so new, to heap that onto Ken Dorsey's plate, that might be a bit too much. He doesn't know what his personnel can even accomplish or do yet. He doesn't know how these guys would react in the heat of a moment. He doesn't know how they'll be in a 2-minute drill or on a contested catch. So I think that Kevin should retain play calling duties and go from there.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I. Going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return. Sports for CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You might have expected all the games and all the excitement. And even though you couldn't see it right away, it's all right here. 5 games in 1. $22 million in prizes between $25 and $500, and a shot at $1 million grand prize. Golden Casino, a night's worth of excitement for just $10.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Daryl from Dixon, Kentucky. I think we need to probably go ahead and just move on from this whole staff because it seems like a lot of our fan base is disappointed that we're not a dumpster fire anymore. We're actually winning games and competing for things, and people want to cry about Coach Stefanski all the time. Have a good day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, the thing to remember is, you went 11-5, then it was 8-9, 7-10, back to 11, now 11-6. So you're consistently in the middle of the pack at that point. Now the key is, and it's harder to get to the middle of the pack than it is to go from middle of the pack to constant playoff team.
Well, I'll tell you what. They really, really cannot rest on their laurels from last season. I've been saying this a lot, and I'm going to be saying it a lot throughout the offseason. They did not face a gauntlet of the best quarterbacks in the NFL last year. They really did not. I mean, there were some cases where, a number of cases where they got the backup, and in some cases when they got the starter, he was coming off of a pretty significant injury. I'm talking about Joe Burrow in the opener. I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence later in the season. We didn't even think that Trevor Lawrence was going to be able to play that game when we saw his gruesome high ankle sprain from 6 days beforehand. So, these guys just didn't have to face the best of the best this season, and they're going to have a much tougher lineup in 2024, including Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. And the list kind of goes on and on. Probably a healthy Joe Burrow twice, a healthy Lamar Jackson twice. It's going to be hard. It's going to be much harder. And so, I don't think they can look at it and say, oh, geez, we had the number 1 defense. We're good to go. I don't think you can do that. I think you have to really look at it and say, what can we do to get better? And I think that they will do that. That's how Andrew Berry operates every single year. And he's very aggressive in adding talent. And I think they have to do that. I think they need, I would add another sort of fearsome pass rusher to pair with Myles Garrett, whether that's from the interior or from the edge. I still think that they need another guy that can get you almost double-digit sacks. I don't know if they feel that way or not, but I think that's what you need. And then, I think that they need another really, really good receiver to pair with Amari Cooper, somebody that, has the potential to sort of have 1,000 yards or make the Pro Bowl. And again, they might not agree with that because they think globally about their pass catchers. And I think they would tell you that, they've got Amari and they've got David Njoku, and, who's got two guys like that. But it can't hurt to keep pushing the envelope and to keep the pedal to the metal and just to keep trying to add talent so that you're kind of loaded at certain spots. And so, that's what I would do. I would find a way to come up with some money. I wouldn't think that you arrived anywhere just because you made the playoffs this year. They won a lot of close games. And sometimes those things can even out if the bounces all don't go your way the next year. So I think they've got to work very, very hard to get better in the offseason.
This one from one of your Hey Mary Kays that I found really interesting. When during the year do you think the Browns decided to make the change at offensive coordinator?
It's a good question. I don't know if they did it late in the season. Maybe it was later when they saw that, Alex Van Pelt was really humming along so nicely with Joe Flacco. Maybe at that point they thought, you know what, he's better suited for that kind of quarterback than a Deshaun Watson. I don't know. We really haven't had a chance to ask anybody yet, sort of, dig into that topic a little bit more. But that's one thing that came to my mind, that, it became evident at some point that maybe they needed a different pair of eyes on Deshaun Watson, somebody who had experience coaching dual threat quarterbacks in the way that Ken Dorsey does. So I think that was ultimately what clinched it for Ken Dorsey, that he had success with Cam Newton, that he had success with Josh Allen. And, I just think that that's what they were looking for, and it will probably really help them maximize Deshaun's skill set this season.
So when you look at it, 2 years in to the Deshaun Watson trade, two things. Where do you think that trade stands in the Browns' mind? And then also, do you think he's going to be ready? He said on his podcast, rehab is on schedule. Do you think he's ready to throw in the spring?
Well, he's supposed to be. So, he's supposed to be able to start throwing. That's the way that, that it was always kind of put to us. So he should be doing that. He should be getting ready to do that fairly soon. And, that's great. Even if he just is throwing on a very light or limited basis, it's time to start thinking about football again pretty soon. So, that's really good. He's always been on schedule, at times maybe even a little bit ahead of schedule. But the point with this whole thing is nobody knows for sure how that's going to go because there is no precedence for it. I can't find any other NFL quarterback that has suffered a fractured glenoid bone in his right throwing shoulder or his throwing shoulder at all. So we just don't know how he's going to come back from this. Is it going to take a little while? Are they going to have setbacks? Is it just going to be an upward trajectory? It's hard to know. And I don't even think that Deshaun Watson really can answer those questions right now.
Do you think Dorsey can kind of work the same magic with Deshaun Watson? You mentioned had success with Cam Newton, had success with Josh Allen. Not exactly the same skill sets, but guys that are athletic and throw the ball a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think that Ken Dorsey kind of knows when to hold him, knows when to fold him. He knows that these guys are out there, willing to sacrifice their body on every single play, that there's never a play they don't think they can make. They like to take risks. You have to live with the good and you have to live with the bad. So he knows all of that. He's got a comfort level with the off-schedule plays. Those kinds of things aren't going to bother him. The offense that Alex runs is probably just so much more of a precision timing type of game. That's not Deshaun. And so now they've got somebody in that spot that understands all of that stuff and, is really well versed in spread and RPO concepts and drop back nuances and all of those kinds of things. So, we'll see where it all goes. But I've said this many times before as well. It's all new. It's all new for everyone. And it might take a little while for it to look like a well-oiled machine.
Do you think Nick Chubb, assuming he's healthy, is he the bread and butter of this offense, or do you think that even looks a little different? Do you expect how different do you think the offense looks?
Well, I think it will look a lot different. If you've got Deshaun Watson, you're not going to be focused on the running game as your number one thing. It's going to be a complement to the passing game, and you will still run the ball, as Kevin always has, but, it's not going to be your bread and butter necessarily. Your bread and butter should be Deshaun Watson's arm talent and his leg talent. Your dual threat $230 million quarterback. That's going to be your bread and butter. And so I think they have to keep building around him. They have to keep making sure that the offense is focused on him and what he does well. One of the interesting things that I have written about a few times were those scripted plays, and we've talked about it a little bit too. I think it's interesting to see what they're going to do about that. I think scripted plays are necessary in the NFL, but maybe there's a way to work within those scripted plays that gives Deshaun Watson a feeling of more autonomy.
Yeah, and when he is at his best, or at least when he's been at his best with the Texans, you see him kind of changing things at the line of scrimmage and reacting pretty quickly. So, I understand exactly what you're saying there. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Talk a little bit about the draft and a little bit about the defense. Sports4CLE, you'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Good evening. Love the show. I just wanted to call in as we finish the Super Bowl, and I'm already looking for the off-season activities. I just wanted to lobby for the team to head back to Greenbrier. I think that did a lot for the camaraderie and building relationships amongst the team, the players, the coaches, especially since we have pretty much turned our offensive coaching staff upside down. I just think that was time well spent, and I would like to get your take on that and hopefully create some buzz. So if any of the Browns leadership or Andrew Berry's listening, that they strongly consider going back to Greenbrier. Looking forward to the season. Go Browns. God bless.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, we heard even later in the year the players refer back to Greenbrier. What are it seems like it was a success. Do you think they try to do it again?
Yeah, you know what? I wonder if they get the Brazil game, then I wonder if they want to be on the road that much, or maybe they'll want to be on the road even more to try to get ready for having to start the season in Brazil. So it's hard to say what the thinking is going to be there. But certainly they got a lot out of it, and plenty of team bonding was done. They really, a lot of them became friends that weren't friends before that trip. And, it was just a good time was had by all. And yet you're still sort of, in the middle of nowhere to a certain extent. So you can't get in too much trouble. In most cases, you don't have your families there. So you can really just focus on training camp and getting better. And, it was great. It was great. It was, the reporters, we all stayed in the town of Lewisburg, and that's just a darling little town. It was great. We did a lot of media bonding, so we all had fun too. And I wouldn't mind doing it again. We all enjoyed that time. And, it would be quite a way to start the season to go to, the Greenbrier for 10 days and then Brazil for a week. But you know what? Just like Deshaun said, I'm all in. So let's go for it.
This is kind of interesting as well. So at the start of the new league year, 3 of the 4 Browns first defensive tackles, if you will, that have the highest snap counts will be free agents. Maurice Hurst, he had 28.6, and he was injured. Shelby Harris, 41.6. Jordan Elliott, 41.8. They had 14.8% of the run stops, almost 15% of the QB pressures, 11.2% of the sacks. I would assume they would like two of those back at a minimum? Don't you? Those guys were all productive. Jordan Elliott took a huge step forward, I thought, too.
Yeah, he did. And remember that Andrew Berry loves to develop those draft picks and have an opportunity to see their careers through. So I'm sure they will make every effort to get him under contract. And, I'm sure same thing with the other guys. Those guys did a nice job. And these are not guys that are going to break the bank for you. So these are good complementary pieces. Now, you can change them out in some cases, but if the camaraderie is already good, and it really is with those guys, then you might want to do whatever you can to get them wrapped up again.
We kind of touched on this earlier. What do you think the biggest needs are defensively? It was the really highly ranked defense in its first year. What do you think they need to even make it a little bit more elite?
Well, I really do think that they need another really good rusher, whether from the interior or from the edge. I really do think that they need to have somebody else that's going to get double-digit sacks besides Miles. I think that will help him in so many ways, take some pressure off him, maybe take a little bit of chipping or double teaming away from him. So I would try to find somebody along those lines that can help you in that way. But, they really like Z as their number 2 edge. So, they might be content to do that, and that's fine. But I don't think you can have too many pass rushers that can get to the quarterback and get those sacks. So especially with the lineup of quarterbacks they're facing this year, I would really, really push the envelope there and try to find another really formidable edge rusher or interior rusher that can get a bunch of sacks.
What about you? So the Browns, no pick in the first round. They do have a second-round draft pick this year. What do you think the priority is there?
They don't have priorities. That's not how they operate. Sometimes your needs match up with the best available players, and that's always beautiful when that happens. That's basically what they felt happened in 2020 when they needed a new starting left tackle, and it was such a deep left tackle draft. And so that's why they picked Jed at number 10 there, Jed Wills. And, this year, I don't think they have a glaring need. I don't think they believe they have a glaring need, and they're not going to go into the draft thinking, oh, we've got to get this position or that position. Some of those needs will be filled in free agency where you already have a proven player that you can go out and grab, or in a trade in some cases. So I think they'll let the draft come to them. They'll draft the best available player, and sometimes when you don't think they need a cornerback, they're going to draft a cornerback like they did with Martin Emerson. So there will be no rhyme or reason to necessarily what they do in the second round.
Well, the Martin Emerson turned out really well. So did DeJuan Jones. So the last couple of years, when they haven't had picks in the first round, they have had picks that have been impactful in their draft.
Yeah, they have. I mean, DeJuan Jones, I'm telling you what, he's going to become one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL, I think. He's learning how to use his size. Too bad for him and everyone else that Bill Callahan is no longer here. But I'm sure that Andy Dickerson will do a really, really nice job with this offensive line. He's been here before. He's got a great reputation. And I think he'll pick up where Bill Callahan left off, because DeJuan Jones is, I think, a future Pro Bowler. And it's just going to be fun to watch him develop over the years. So
reports are now surfacing that T. Higgins, who could become a free agent, expected to be franchise tagged by the Bengals. And Mary Kay, that's not a surprise. They may pay him, they may trade him, but they weren't going to let him get away for basically nothing.
No. And, why would you? I mean, you've got Joe Burrow coming off of an injury. Of course, he needs and wants T. Higgins out there for him. He's in the prime of his career. He's amazing at what he does. And now is not the time for them to be giving up on a player like a T. Higgins. And, they can, once again, just in the same way the Browns can, they can restructure the contract of Joe Burrow and find some cap space for themselves to be able to keep a supporting cast for Joe. So I do think that they will do everything they possibly can to hang on to him and that the Browns will not be able to get at him.
All right, before I let you go, this from NFL.com, NFL Power Rankings after the Super Bowl. They go Chiefs 1. This is for next year. 49ers 2, Ravens 3, Lions 4, Bills 5. They have the Browns at 8. Pressure has already been on Deshaun Watson. It's now cranked up even more. Browns have to know that their Super Bowl window won't stay open for very long. They need to strike while the iron is hot. Watson must deliver a major step up in terms of performance. I guess that's true. Yeah, some of it.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. If you have a really good front office, then you can build a dynasty and you can keep your Super Bowl window open, okay? I don't think that the Chiefs are sitting there thinking, oh, geez, our Super Bowl window is closing. If you have the quarterback, your Super Bowl window is open, and you are open for business to try to get to a Super Bowl. And we heard Andrew Berry say in his wrap-up press conference that he views Deshaun Watson as sort of a 10-year-long project. So he's only going to be heading into year 3 of that project. And so they should have plenty of time to accomplish their dreams and goals. Unfortunately for them, they do have to contend with Patrick Mahomes doing the same thing over there in Kansas City for another decade or so. But I think they should be okay in that regard, and they just have to keep building and building the team. But I don't think anything's closing anytime soon.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Mary Kay.
Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out, cleveland.com, as well as the pages of the Plain Dealer. Always outstanding Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily Network 216. We continue talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You might have expected all the games and all the excitement. And even though you couldn't see it right away, it's all right here. 5 games in 1. $22 million in prizes between $25 and $500, and a shot at $1 million grand prize. Golden Casino, a night's worth of excitement for just $10.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Patrick Mahomes, in his 6th season as a starting quarterback in the NFL, won his 3rd Super Bowl. Only 4 other quarterbacks in the history of NFL have won that many Super Bowls. Mahomes was taken by the Kansas City Chiefs with the 10th overall pick in the 2017 draft by Ken Dorsey, who would later become the Browns GM. In that same draft, Mitch Trubisky was taken 2nd overall. Deshaun Watson was drafted 12th by the Texans. Dorsey took plenty of heat for drafting Mahomes.
So Patrick Mahomes, I don't like it. I do not like this pick.
It is Patrick Mahomes. Just like I said to you, Trubisky doesn't have the resume that tells me that he's better than Deshaun Watson. I damn sure ain't gonna say Patrick Mahomes does.
This is a really good football player, and I think these types of guys don't come around that often.
Like, if he's that good, you went over Deshaun Watson. You traded up, but I still got to wait on the cookies. The cookies ain't ready yet.
I'm willing to invest in that type of player because I believe in his skill set and what he is going to develop into.
When I hear words about Pat Mahomes, these are the words I hear: undisciplined, lacking fundamentals, immature.
I disagree with you. I don't believe it's a reach. I believe this guy's a very talented player in the future.
Why are you drafting a quarterback? Why are you trading up to draft a quarterback that doesn't just have bad footwork, has no footwork?
I can see this guy developing into a really good football player.
The only one out of them going to win a championship, if there is one, is Deshaun Watson.
At the end of the day, we had Mahomes rated above Watson. That's how we saw it.
Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City! Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily Network 216. Case, that's why you don't judge a draft on draft night. But it's interesting, you know. Sometimes when you wait for the cookies, they taste a little bit better.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that want those takes back now, you know. They're 6 years into it, and this kid's leading a dynasty. But John Dorsey's always had an eye for talent. No one could deny that. I would argue that he's one of the elite talent evaluators in all the NFL. You know, his shortcomings were always contractual and financial side of the business. But if we're talking about the guy who can just pick him on draft day and get you a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro, John Dorsey's that guy.
Yeah, the Freddie Kitchens hill was not a good one for him to lay down on, without question. All right, so we saw the Chiefs and we saw the 49ers. How far are the Browns away from that level, do you think?
I don't know about you, Dave, but I was sitting there watching that game, and a couple times my mind went to it. The Browns would win that type of game a couple times this season. You know, you watched it. So I know it feels like you're far away, you know, getting bounced in the first round of the playoffs. But if you've seen the product on the field Sunday night, the Browns could win that. You know, they're not that far off. Now, obviously, season to season, there's not a ton of carryover in the league. You know, just because you did it one year doesn't mean you're going to do it the next. But I think you got to feel good about where you're at from your pillars. You know, the pillars of your team, the foundation on the defense was laid. Now it's up to this offense, this newly formed offensive coaching staff, how it marries with the personnel. But I feel good. I feel good about their chances, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they need, you know, consistent, elite to really good quarterback play. Mahomes, you know, you watch him and I knew he was going to do it, but he didn't play well until the game was on the line, and then he played lights out.
Yeah, it took overtime for them to get to 20 points. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just, but at the end of the day, it's Patrick Mahomes on a final drive. You're going to like your odds 10 times out of 10 if you have that. So the Browns can get that level of quarterback play. Look out.
All right, Browns free agency, and it's tiered from must re-sign to no thanks. This from Dogs by Nature. Must re-sign, they go Maurice Hurst, projected annual contract $2.186 million. Should re-sign, they go Siani Takitaki, and they project him at $4.778 million. Could re-sign punter Corey Bojorquez, $2.899. Maybe Nick Harris, projected at $2.286, and they're going to pass on Jacob Phillips, $1.5. When I look at that, Maurice Hurst is a yes. I like Taki. I don't know that I like him at that price, but he's valuable because he can play all over the place. I think you need Bojorquez back.
Yeah, I like this thought exercise, you know, because when you have so many high-dollar contracts, you have to nail the smaller ones. You got to maximize what production you get out of these smaller contracts. And Maurice Hurst is a priority for me. Just what he gives you as a rotational pass-rushing defensive tackle. A guy who's probably going to play 30% of the snaps, but he's highly impactful. And the way this league is, you need a guy who can do exactly that. I kind of view Taki as a priority as well, just based on the way your linebacking room's constructed, all the free agents you have. For me, that's your Sam, a guy who can play some Mike. He's the attitude, he's the physicality, can play special. He's a glue guy. I need Taki back. But Boho, man, you said it. That he was a weapon. They were able to weaponize him with the way he was punting, the way the kick coverage units were working. And when you have the defense that the Browns have, pinning teams like that's a weapon. So I'm with you, man. I'm getting him under contract if at all possible. And if I'm Nick Harris, I'm probably looking to play somewhere else. His opportunity's not going to be here. I view him as a starting caliber center. You know, it's just the way that it's fell here, and they already went and drafted yet another center. If I'm Nick Harris, I'm probably looking to move on. And you got to feel bad for Jacob Phillips. You know, he's flashed a ton of ability. Unfortunately for him, it's not availability. He's missed like 75% of his games, and at this point, the Browns just have to cut their losses.
All right, this one from Sports Illustrated. One bold prediction for every team in 2024. For the Browns, they will be aggressive on the backup quarterback market. Joe Flacco won Comeback Player of the Year because of a heroic, unexpected month of football. Spelling the Browns after the team was entirely cleaned out at the position. Maybe he's the answer for the Browns. Maybe they lock up a player like Jacoby Brissett. Either way, not backstopping the Deshaun Watson situation is pure lunacy. What are your thoughts? Who do you think they attack or target, if you will, as a backup quarterback?
Well, I agree with that last sentence. You know, you're in your winning window. You got to get someone competent to back him up. Obviously, there's the obvious suspects. You know, if you can get Joe Flacco to agree to be the backup, great. We don't have to think about it any further. I don't think it's going to be that easy. Jacoby made $8 million last year. Are the Browns going to foot that kind of a bill? Doubt it. I'm looking at a player that has nothing to do with Browns ties or anything. I look at Drew Lock. I think that'd be a solid guy to bring in. But I think the elephant in the room is they wind up back with Josh Dobbs. I think it happens again. It's a vicious cycle. He'll be back this offseason and in the quarterback room, and he'll probably be your backup quarterback.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, Network 216 and I. Going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the draft. Interesting quarterback rankings in the offseason. We'll also do a redo of last year's draft. Find out where Dawg Jones would go. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, Network 216. So this is done by CBSSports.com, 2023 draft redo. And they have Dawg Jones of the Browns going in the first round, pick number 11 to the Titans. While the Titans likely happy with the return they got on Peter Skoronski, they opt for Jones because he's playing a more valuable position at tackle. So they have him taking Dawg Jones over the guy they took at 11, who's an offensive lineman. And Jones was that good. That's why he was on the all-rookie team.
Yeah, absolutely a first-round talent. You know, the Browns were so fortunate that he fell the way that he did. And I think it just goes to show these past 2 seasons, the Browns have not had first-round draft picks. But in both drafts, they walked away with first-round talents. When we were doing this exercise a year ago, teams were redrafting Martin Emerson at the end of the first round. Now you see it this year with Dawg Jones. Dawg Jones went 111th, and the redraft, 11th. You know, that just shows the value they were able to get when they took Big Thanos in the 4th.
The other thing is they're not – Andrew Berry has said they wouldn't draft via a position of need. And that's, you know, the last thing you thought they were going to take was a cornerback in Martin Emerson. And really, you had Conklin and you had Jed Wills. So there's something to that line of thinking.
Yeah, they can't pass up value. I think that's what it comes down to. You know, they believe in their system. They believe in their scouting department. And when there's a talent on the board like that, they're not going to pass them up, even if it's at a position that we view as not being a necessity.
All right, so this from the 33rdteam.com. It's Derek Clausen, 2024 offseason quarterback power rankings. Patrick Mahomes is 1, Lamar Jackson is 2, Josh Allen is 3. They got Justin Fields at 21, Derek Carr at 22, Daniel Jones at 23, Wilson at 24, Bryce Young at 25, Desmond Ridder at 26, and Deshaun Watson at 27. I realize that Deshaun Watson has not played well and that he's coming off a couple of significant injuries. I don't think there's any way you put Desmond Ridder or Bryce Young ahead of Deshaun Watson. I just don't see it.
Or Daniel Jones, or an unproven guy who played 4 games last year, like Anthony Richardson at 16. But what you're seeing there is some of these players are getting the benefit of the doubt, and love it or hate it, Watson's not going to be that guy. He's not going to get the benefit of the doubt. He's going to have to prove it on the field. So is 27 too low? Yes. He's going to have to play his way out of that, though.
Yeah, and you know what? He's only played 700 snaps the last 2 seasons. And before that, it was, 300 and some days that he hadn't played.
Yeah, and that's the good part of this, though, is I believe he's going to have that opportunity to lead the Browns on a deep playoff run, and then when we do this list this time next year, he'll be in that top quarter instead of the bottom quarter.
All right, this from Dog Pound Daily. 3 big-name defenders the Browns can sign in free agency. Number 3, defensive tackle Christian Williams. You see, in the past, Browns have gone out and gotten some tackles. Wilkins, a guy they are touting there. Number 2, linebacker Patrick Queen. If you can weaken a rival team, strengthen your own, that's a win-win. And then number 1, Josh Allen. Set to be a free agent 2024. Not a surprise. It's not the superstar quarterback. It's Josh Allen, the edge rusher, who we saw a little bit with the Jaguars. The linebacker, Patrick Queen, doesn't make any sense to me because I don't think they got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who they're going to pay some money to. Wilkins might be out of their price range. Allen, maybe. I mean, if you're going to spend on one of them, Allen would be the guy I would go after.
Yeah, me too. If you're going to give someone a bag, you might as well give it to a guy who's already a top 10 pass rusher in the league and who is ascending. You know, if I'm Jacksonville, I'm throwing a franchise tag on it. I'm not letting that kid walk. But if they're foolish enough to do it, I think he's going to get a bag from someone. It might as well be the Browns. I'm with you on Patrick Queen. I don't see that as a fit. He didn't have any success as a Mike linebacker. He didn't even live up to his expectations until they moved him over to Will when they got Roquan Smith, and that's the position that JOK occupies. So that'd be a pass on Patrick Queen. Wilkins will be interesting. You know, defensive tackles sometimes are undervalued. He's a guy that I was very high on in the draft. He's done nothing as a pro to make me think that he's not the guy that I thought he was. And if he becomes available, someone's going to make a move for him.
What are your thoughts about the wide receiver class? We know T Higgins is probably getting franchised. Reports came out. We talked about that earlier. I would assume same thing with Mike Evans. I don't think he ever reaches it. Who are some legitimate targets, or do you think they don't look to get a name, if you will, or a number 2 to go with Cooper in free agency?
I think Pittman is a guy you look at for sure, but he might fall into that same branch where he might get franchise tagged. But if he becomes available, I think that's a guy you would risk making a move for, just given his age, given his athletic profile. He fits everything that the Browns look for in their guardrails. Another guy who's a little older than you would think he would be Calvin Ridley. Ridley's already 29, although he had that stint where he didn't play for 2 years, one self-imposed and one the gambling infraction. But if you can get your hands on a Calvin Ridley, I believe he's a true number 2, and I think he was underutilized in Jacksonville, and I think he would find a role here really quickly.
What are your thoughts? Another name that's been bandied about is Gabe Davis. What are your thoughts with him, given Ken Dorsey's history with him?
That's a weird one for me. I think he's more of a one-trick player. Now, what he does is something you don't do currently. You don't have someone who can really stretch the field in the way that Gabe Davis can. But I don't see him as a number 2. You know, I see him as an ancillary piece. I think that if you get him, you still have to make yet another move to round out the room. So you don't get worse by signing a Gabe Davis. I just don't think him by himself is the answer.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, Network 216, and I going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break, take a look at some some mock drafts, as well as what positions the Browns have drafted. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You might have expected all the games and all the excitement. And even though you couldn't see it right away, it's all right here. 5 games in one. $22 million in prizes between $25 and $500, and a shot at $1 million grand prize. Golden Casino, a night's worth of excitement for just $10.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and Network 216. So this is the last 5 years, what the Browns have drafted by position in rounds 1 through 3 of the draft. So they've drafted 4 cornerbacks, safeties, 3 wide receivers, 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, which kind of surprises me a little bit, and 1 offensive lineman. And keep in mind, DeJuan Jones isn't there because he was drafted in the 4th round. When you look at that, Casey, that we know they put a premium on defensive backs. The surprising thing is the wide receivers. Those guys just haven't developed like you would want. Now, is it because you haven't had the quarterback and the quarterback play's been uneven?
That definitely plays a part, but you see what their comfort zone is round 3 receiver. It seems to be where they swing every year, and this year that could very well fall the same way. I do think it's interesting to see it laid out like that, though, because like you said, you see the emphasis of they place on the secondary. You know, they're going to, even like you said, it could not be a need. If they see a guy of value that could add to that room, they'll pull a move there. It is kind of shocking they've only went offensive line once in that span. That seems reversal from what you see in the rest of the league. You know, that seems to be a position every team swings on in the first 3 rounds. The Browns, you know, they'll do it as necessary, but it's probably because they feel comfortable with the starters they already have.
Yeah, they invested a lot of money in Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin. So that could do it. Now, you actually have done a post-Super Bowl mock draft. We're going to go through a couple of your projections. Pick 54, you project Braylon Trice, edge rusher from the University of Washington, 6'5", 274. Take us through what you like about Trice.
Well, the Browns definitely have a type when it comes to defensive ends, and Trice checks every single box, the size, the athleticism. In fact, if it was he could play outside linebacker in a 3-4, but I think he's going to be best suited for at 4-3, hand in the dirt. It's a guy who really gets after it, a high motor player. He had 70 pressures last year. He has tremendous closing speed. And I think what it does is if you go get a player of that caliber, it finally puts an end to the need of the Browns field to go rent defensive ends for a year or two, veterans, guys that are longer in the tooth, because you have the emergence of Alex Wright. You have Ogbo Okoronkwo's ability as a rotational pass rusher off the edge. You go get a young stud like this to pair with Miles, and you can stop renting those 1-2 year guys and kind of lower your overall cost in the process.
All right, pick 85. So that would be in the 3rd round, and you've said the 3rd round's where they draft wide receivers. This one you have Johnny Wilson, wide receiver for Florida State. What do you like about him? What do you see? 6'6", 237. So take us through what you see with Wilson.
Well, that's obviously where it starts, that frame, but it's also what's made him a very divisive prospect. There's a lot of draft pundits that are of the mind that he's going to have to move to tight end. That's not what I see when I watch his tape, though. I see a power slot, a walking mismatch, and a guy who can go play on the outside whenever you need him to. But 6'6", 237, and a lot of guys who are tall and lanky like that, they kind of condense their body when they get in traffic and are afraid to extend themselves. Not this guy. Johnny Wilson will use every inch of his frame to give his quarterback a catch radius. Is fearless over the middle, and just gives you an automatic mismatch and another guy that you can really take advantage of that frame in the red zone.
Yeah, that's what, when you were talking about that, I'm like, red zone, that screams red zone to me as well. All right, 135. This is the last one that we'll take in your mock draft. You did an entire draft, but you had Dwayne Carter, defensive tackle from Duke, 6'2", 308 pounds. What do you like about him?
The thing that jumps off the screen is his motor. This kid's motor, his motor is what's going to endear him to Jim Schwartz and to the fans. This kid plays with his hair on fire. Like you said, 6'2", 308. Not an overly big defensive tackle. Stout in run defense, though. That's where he's going to make his bread early on. He's lower half explosivity really holds him at the line of scrimmage, and then his ability to use that motor to get after the runners laterally, really jump off the tape. He's just a guy that you could tell 3-year captain at Duke. He's a leader. He's a guy that players want to be around. At the Senior Bowl, he had kind of a mix showing because they kept kind of moving him around, playing him a little bit at edge. That's not what he's fit for. This kid's a 3-tech in the NFL, and I think that if you put him in that room, all of a sudden the floor of that room just raises that much higher.
All right, we're talking about another wide receiver. This is Marcus Mosher tweets this out. Analytics community is going to fall in love with Michigan wide receiver Roman Wilson. 98th percentile receiving grade, 97th percentile receiving grade versus single coverage, 93rd percentile separation rate versus single coverage, 80th percentile in yards per route run. Those numbers are via Pro Football Focus. Another guy that kind of stood out at the Senior Bowl in Mobile.
Yeah, and leading up to the Senior Bowl, I really got into his tape. And Mosier's not wrong. People are going to fall in love with him. Analytics, football people, it's going to be consensus by the time the draft gets here. But he's been a bit of a projection just because the offense he played at in Michigan really didn't lend itself to wide receiver production. But when you watch his individual skill set, what he does so effortlessly is just get separation. He just creates separation. And a lot of times when you see those type of players, they're real violent in their routes. He's not. He's a real smooth mover, efficiency of movement, but he still gets that separation. It's kind of deceiving. But yeah, he was open all day at the Senior Bowl. And when they would go best on best, it was always him getting singled out. Like he's a separation machine. And if he's available, I think that's something the Browns must consider.
All right, along those lines, Pro Football Focus mock draft. Pick 55, they have the Browns going with Roman Wilson. And you see the guy that you mocked to him, they have the Eagles taking one pick ahead of him. Now, running back Jonathan Brooks, who some people have talked about from Texas, and Tez Walker, both on the board when they mock Roman Wilson. How do you think Wilson fits into what the Browns want to do offensively?
I think it would slot everything appropriately because you'd have your slot receiver right there, and then you can move Elijah Moore. And I know a lot of people view Elijah Moore as a slot. I think he's better suited to be on the outside, running those vertical routes. I think that's where he can really do damage for you. So by adding someone like Roman Wilson, I think it kind of slots your wide receivers appropriately, and you can get the most out of the room that you have.
Now, the running back position is one that is deep, but when you look at the draft and draft experts, expect it to be second, third, late second, third, fourth round is where a lot of them go. Is that when you look at and there's some that are very young. I'm thinking Estime and Allen rather from Wisconsin are both incredibly young running backs.
Yeah, Braylon Allen, he's 240 pounds. The kid's 20 years old. Esteem's the same way. It's a different kind of class, because if you look at that particular mock we just looked at, Brooks not going until the mid-50s, and most likely he was probably the first back off the board. So when the Browns get their first pick in the second round, they'll have every running back available to them. So, if they have someone they have in mind to be that guy, they could pounce there. But there's going to be third round, fourth round, you're still going to have guys that fall there that are starting caliber in the long run, but they could also go for more of a third down back because those guys are available in this draft too. You look at a Bucky Irving out of Oregon, there's going to be that sweet spot between the end of day 2 and the beginning of day 3, where if the Browns are going to strike for running back, that's probably where they go.
Gut feeling, what do you think they do in the second round?
It just depends on how the board falls. Like the way I did it, I didn't think Trice would be available when I was doing my mock, and he was there. And I think you have to make that choice. I view receiver as more of a priority, but as their history has shown, they usually don't go there before round 3. So if there's a position of what they view as value, if you're looking at edge, I doubt it's corner, but you can't take it off the board with these guys just the way they operate. But I think if there's a starting caliber edge defender, that's where you have to go.
Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily Network 216. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Always really good Browns coverage. Dog Pound Daily. Also check him out, Network 216. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.